Welcome to the Ascend Growth AI podcast. I'm your host, Niki Cantrell, and today I'm excited to welcome Chris Bogart, one of the co-founders behind Sasco River Center. Sasco River Center is known for its deeply human, multidisciplinary approach to mental health and well-being, bringing together therapy, diagnostics, coaching, and family-centered care to support individuals across all stages of life. Chris has played a key role in building a model that balances compassion, clinical excellence, and sustainable growth in a rapidly changing healthcare landscape. Today, we'll dive into Chris's journey, leadership lessons, and how Sasco River is navigating industry shifts and how technology, especially AI, can unlock new opportunities to better serve clients, reach more families, and capture growth that often slips through the cracks. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Nikki, for inviting me.
To kick us off, tell us about Sasco River Center and your journey to helping build what it is today.
Sure. And I love talking about it because we really have had such a fun journey becoming the multidisciplinary center that we are currently. The whole idea behind Sasco River Center is that so often in the field of behavioral health care, especially with children, things get so fragmented. Like you might have to take your child to this provider for psychotherapy and this provider for learning support, this provider for their pediatrician or whatever. And parents are in this position of running all around trying to get their child the care that they may need. And then providers very often struggle to have any ability to communicate with each other. Sasco River Center is a multidisciplinary practice that brings together many of those different puzzle pieces. The whole idea being if you can bring providers together who can collaborate, learn from each other, share insights, all of that, the care that's provided to kids becomes much more efficient, much more effective. And so we started years ago. And then, where we are today is we now have a group of about 80 providers that are part of our team across multiple different disciplines. And the model has really been fully embraced by the community. And we've been able to help so many families, so many community organizations.
It's fantastic. What was it that originally drew you into this field and what kept you committed as the business evolved?
So my own background is I was trained as a child clinical psychologist and got my degree. Believe it or not, this is my 40th year. So I got my degree 40 years ago. I started when I was 3. So no, I got my degree fairly young, but then moved into working in a private practice. And so I was working one-on-one with kids, doing psychotherapy, doing psychological testing. And I think I did a great job. I think I had a good practice, but I constantly found that I was only one part of helping these kids develop. And so often I was saying to parents, I think your child might benefit from this other type of therapy, or you might benefit from considering medication or whatever it is. And the ability for the parent to move on from the relationship they built with me to a new provider and then another provider and bring all that together. Very often what would end up happening is the care would just stop and they wouldn't be able to put those pieces together. And so about 20 years ago, I decided, I'm going to see if I can start pulling together like-minded people who feel like that type of an integrated model is really the right way to work with kids. And so we started, I started with just a occupational therapist and a speech and language pathologist and a learning specialist. And over time, we added other different experts and different ways of looking at child development. And that's where we got to where we are today. And so it really is something that my own journey in terms of seeing what worked with kids is what led me to feel like this was the right model.
Right. That's amazing. How has your leadership style changed from the early days to where you are now?
I can remember like very early on when we first opened up the center, and it was literally about 8 people who basically we were sharing space. We hadn't formed this multidisciplinary model yet. We were 8 different clinicians sharing space. And I can remember one of the colleagues coming into my office one day and saying, hey, boss, what are we going to do about this? And I was like, boss, I'm not your boss. What are you talking about? I don't even know what that means. And where my leadership style has come is I still don't stand on being boss, but what I've realized is that for an organization to thrive, you need somebody or a group of leaders who are really setting the mission and the values of the organization, jumped into the deep end of realizing that an organization grows and develops a real culture based on having a strong mission that everybody believes in and everybody shares the same values for the organization. And so that's where I think I've grown as a leader, is really drilling down and trying to be crystal clear as to what are we trying to solve here? What are we trying to bring to the community? And what are our core values? And returning to that and making every decision based on that is what's allowed us to grow as an organization.
Yeah, that's for sure. And you're stronger when you're all learning from each other and then also contributing.
Yeah, exactly.
What were some of the biggest mindset shifts that you had to make as Sasco River grew?
Well, I'd say some of the mindset shifts that had to occur for everybody is moving from a place of feeling like my view of child development is the right view of child development, and shifting to a mindset of my view in child development is one slice of the pie. And so really getting to a place of comfort with the idea of I do not have all the answers, and being able to truly rely on and actually love the feedback from colleagues saying, yeah, I don't think you're looking at that the right way. I actually think that this might be what's going on. And being able to blend different points of view, I'd say, has been the biggest mindset shift for me, as well as many of the members of the organization, is getting to the idea of kind of that group think mentality as opposed to individual think mentality. The other, there's been a lot of shifts also just in terms of the business processes, So for an organization to go from having a few people bring in a few bucks to an organization that brings in multiple millions of dollars and things like that, you have to shift in terms of the idea of we've all got to embrace the idea that we can't have 50 different operations working here. We can't have 50 different systems for who does what, timelines for how things get done. And so I think another big shift for everybody, because many of the people who came to work here were people who were in their own individual private practice before they came here. And getting folks comfortable with the idea of having an integrated, consistent system that everybody is following really does end up leading us to be able to grow as an organization and to meet the needs of a larger number of clients.
That's actually really true because most therapists are one on one. They're doing their world one on one. So I'm sure it is a bit of a cultural adjustment to become part of a team, positive and negative. You learn things about your own self at the same time, right? But then also the collaboration makes for probably much better therapy as well.
And there are some superb therapists out there working in their own private practice or a small group practice with a couple other clinicians, and that is great. And that's a part of the delivery of healthcare that is needed. But there is also, I think, not only the need for, but the the incredible impact of a large organization like ours, where I truly believe the idea of, like, if you bring together 80 different brains that all have a slightly different way of looking at things, boy, the growth in terms of how we're able to meet the demands of some really, really challenging kids, some really, really difficult family situations is really powerful to observe.
Who would you say is your ideal customer or family that Sasco River is best positioned to serve?
I would say there are many different types of families and clients that we do really well with. I'd say probably the type of client that feels most comfortable with us is the type of client who recognizes that having the benefit of multiple different perspectives is very useful to the ability to solve some of the challenges that they might be experiencing with their children. And so, many people even, certainly in 2026, this is still true. There are many people who feel incredibly uncomfortable about going to see a psychologist or going to see, somebody for a type of therapy. And walking into one of our centers that is a large, it's a large site and there are many different families there coming for services, you're potentially, saying, all right, I'm comfortable with the idea of by showing up here, I'm sort of saying to the world, I need a little bit of help. My kids might need a little bit of help. And so, some people are just not comfortable with that. And they would do much better working with an individual provider in a small office and things like that. But a client who is able to say, I really want to embrace the idea that this type of group mind melding, so to speak, is really what's going to help my child to be able to progress, is the type of client that's going to do very well with us. And when people come to us, they still have their own individual clinician that is the leader of their care. So it's not like they come to us and they see 20 different people. They're usually aligned with one provider or maybe two providers providing different services. But what they get when they come here is those one or two providers that have the benefit of 70 other providers giving them ideas and guidance and supervision.
Perfect. That's awesome. Is there a specific geographic area that you currently serve?
We're based in Fairfield County, Connecticut, which is kind of the lower one third of the state of Connecticut. It is a community that is very close to New York City. So we see clients from New York City up into what's called Westchester County, which is county north of New York City, into Fairfield County, up to Hartford, up to New Haven. So it's a fairly large segment, but we're definitely based in that pocket of the Northeast of the United States.
Do you guys currently do therapy sessions over the internet?
I would say about 90% of our care is delivered in person. So we work predominantly with families that are close enough to us that they can drive to us. But no, we do see folks across the country. So, one of the real advances in the field of psychology has been there's something called PsyPact, which is I'm licensed in the state of Connecticut, but I can deliver psychotherapy services to any other state that's part of this SIPAC system, which I think currently is about 37 different states. So the bulk of the states in this country, I'm able to deliver psychotherapy to. And we do provide psychotherapy. We provide psychological assessments. We provide medication management. So we're able to do that as long as we carry licensure that allows us to do that in the other states.
Right, right. I forgot about that part. So that's true. And with every industry, you
Yeah,
have to be licensed in every state, but we're all still the same human with the same mind and the same issues.
right.
They're not hindered by the boundary. What major trends in mental health and well being are impacting your growth strategy right now?
I would say that one of the major trends is the increased presence of AI models in the field of behavioral health care. And it's gotten a lot of good press and a lot of bad press. The AI models that, even form what could certainly be termed a therapeutic relationship, being able to provide, a sounding board for a person or being able to provide guidance on how to solve different problems in life. That presence in the mental health field has become huge over the last few years. And many clients coming into therapy that I'm working with and my colleagues are working with very often have dabbled in what different platforms in AI are able to provide. We've had to do as clinicians is not jump into this place of like, oh my gosh, AI is bad and stay away from it and stuff like that or anything. We've really had to embrace the idea of how to guide clients on how to responsibly use artificial intelligence models. I mean, the beauty of AI is it's available 24/7. I'm not available 24/7. And so teaching clients how to potentially access, different guidance in a way that is safe and in a way that's not going to lead them to believe everything that might come back at them within a dialectic that might be going on within that type of a conversation. I'd say, some of the other trends that are connected also to the advancement of technology and AI models and things like that is there is just more ready access to information. So whereas, we used to be very, very much seen as like we're the experts in the field, we can provide this blog post or we can provide a presentation that nobody else can provide because we've got access to this research. Well, now there's great AI models that can create all of that pretty quickly. But again, what we've adapted to is rather than saying, no, we won't touch that. We've adapted to being able to provide more research based, evidence based information to the families that we work with using AI to support that, but using our clinical training and our knowledge of research to be able to weed through what is truly research based versus what is some conglomeration of information that has no basis to it. And so, those are some of the trends we're seeing. I think, other great trends, though, are advancements in medical care, new different medical psychotherapies or new different things like transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, or other different models of intervention to treat depression and anxiety. The beauty of having a field that is very driven by research is coming up with new therapies that hopefully can alleviate some of the pain that people are in.
That's awesome. Where do you see the biggest gap in the mental health system that organizations like yours can help fill?
Well, the biggest gaps are the gaps that exist in every area of our society, in my opinion, is I think there's huge equity gaps. The reality is that this type of behavioral health care, medical care is way more accessible to people who can afford it, right? Whether they've got great insurance or whether they can afford out of pocket care. And then there are huge gaps in terms of people who really really have great need but can't access that just because of their lack of resources or because they're geographically so far away from where they're able to be able to access it. That goes back to your previous question of are there ways that you can provide care outside of your own geographical area. That's one of the real opportunities, is that we now are able to reach a larger segment of the population that might not have this type of care right, within driving distance of them. So that's an area where we're trying to fill some of those gaps. I think some of the other gaps that we're stepping into a great deal currently is we are doing a lot of support of the community. So instead of just working with individual families, individual children, we're now working with a lot of community organizations, nonprofits, schools, and doing a lot of training of people who are there in the front lines, teachers and educators and community leaders, training them in different ways of being able to intersect more effectively based upon research driven models, teaching them how to intersect more effectively with larger populations. So taking what we're able to do in a smaller framework and then be able to train more people so that that can be delivered.
That's fantastic. Do you lead up the training part of it, or do you have someone else in your organization?
I am probably the person who's involved in it the most at the moment. You're putting your finger on a very big thing that we're trying to adjust here, is making sure that everybody within the organization has different parts that they're leading. And so in our organization, we've grown so much and brought on so many excellent people that more and more of our team members are stepping in to be able to deliver professional development, trainings to the community, things like that.
That's great. Where do you feel like there's opportunities today where potential clients or families fall through the cracks?
I think part of the opportunities are just being able to get the word out that there are great treatments available, and I think so often, parents are overwhelmed with, how do you juggle demands of work and kids and this and that and all these different pieces, and they may see their child struggling but not know how to begin to meet some of the needs that they might have. And I think just being able to get the information out there, this type of a podcast hopefully reaches a variety of different people that can open their eyes to the idea of the multitude of different models for intervening with children that exist, and this model being one of them that has shown such impact. So the biggest opportunity I think is hopefully getting the word out to a larger number of people, whether through internet searches, through podcasts, through content delivery that there are answers for many of the different challenges that kids have in growing up.
I actually just that was coming to my mind as you were talking is how do you get you out there in specifically like the geofencing in the areas that you're licensed? I mean, 30 states is a lot of states to be able to expand to. I mean, I do think parents do often sit there and go, "Oh, who do I find? How do I find it? Who's good? Who's qualified? Where is my child safe?" All those questions, and to be able to answer those questions in a way that people are just drawn because they get the answers before they even get to you.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. If AI could help you capture and support those lost or delayed leads, what would you think that that would look like ideally?
I think that is the beauty of where, I think a lot of these models are going is being able to more efficiently capture people who have interest. So whether they're doing an internet search or something like that, being able to steer them more effectively in directions of organizations like ours, and then being able to, again, I talked about that 24/7 component that, more often than not, people are not sitting down and having the time at 2 in the afternoon to call Sasco River Center and speak to one of our incredible intake coordinators. They're at 11 o'clock at night when their kids are finally asleep. They're clicking on a few buttons. And so to be able to have like an AI receptionist that can answer some basic questions and say, well, let me schedule time for you to talk to somebody tomorrow. I think that is an incredibly powerful model that is beginning to take more hold within my field. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of people in my field are very often very suspect of like, I don't want to lose my personal touch in terms of connecting to clients. But the reality is if you just run out of space in your own brain to be able to respond to all of that, you're not helping all the people you could help. So that's one of the areas we're exploring right now is that type of a way of being able to provide somewhat personalized care at times when we can't provide it.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. What's working really well right now that you're especially proud of?
I'd say the thing I'm proud of the most is the incredible team that we have here that really does an amazing job of leaving their personal ego on the side and really looking at the value of the organization as a whole. And so every week we set aside time that nobody sees clients. We get together and we share research that we've read. We talk about cases that we're struggling with. We give guidance to colleagues. We bring in presenters, and that opportunity to continue to grow as a team and to really be able to look at the value of being able to meet so many different types of developmental issues across multiple different providers. That's probably the thing I'm most proud of and most excited by.
Yeah, that's fantastic. On the flip side, what's been the most frustrating or challenging item lately, especially as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most challenging piece is always how do you balance the great clinical care with the demands of staying afloat as a business, and so you have to really be looking at all of these different components that we always want to be able to deliver the optimal care that takes a lot of time and things like that. But then, we have to be earning enough money to be able to pay people what they're worth and to be able to keep the lights on and do all these sorts of things. So balancing the business side of things with the clinical side of things, I'd say is our biggest challenge and my biggest headache. I do think that why it's less of a headache is because we're doing such a good job of delivering the clinical care. It's allowing us to have a really strong business model that is, very robust at the moment.
That's fantastic. What advice would you give to someone who wants to become a CEO or a founder in the health and well-being space?
Be comfortable with having long days and long nights, and I'd say the biggest advice is don't feel like you've got to do it all yourself. Build a great leadership team. Really let them lead. Don't micromanage. Make sure you save time for yourself where you're not constantly out there taking care of issues and putting out fires. Make sure you create time where you can just sit back and think and strategize. Because if you're always out there on the front line doing things, you're not going to help lead the organization in directions that need to be led. So being able to have that balance.
If you were starting over again, what would you tell your younger self?
It goes with what I just said. What I would tell my younger self is don't feel like you've got to be the solution finder for everything. Be comfortable saying, I don't know. Why don't you go research this and get back to me with some ideas? I have had to learn and I still need to learn how to delegate. I don't delegate as much or as easily as I should. And so that's what I would like to tell my younger self and my present self.
What's the biggest win that stands out in your mind over the last 5 to 10 years?
Say the biggest win has been having won over the community that we operate in. I think when we first opened up, there was a lot of skepticism that A, we could deliver the types of results that we said we could deliver, and B, that we were really there to support the community. I think there was a sense of like, oh, you're just here to make money. And I think one of the biggest wins has been convincing people that, yeah, we are a business. We do want to earn money, but we really want to see this community grow and thrive. And I think that being embraced as a true community member has been our biggest win.
Especially when you're known or you can see the results of your efforts and your care, and it changes how people interact within their community, and it changes the feeling of the community itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine that you're like walk proudly. That's fantastic. And as people see other people change, it draws them to look at themselves and say, wow, I probably could improve too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's neat. That's amazing. Looking back now, what's the biggest thing you've learned from your experience?
I would say the biggest thing I've learned is that when you have a vision, keep going with it. It doesn't always come to fruition quickly or immediately. There are a lot of headaches, there are a lot of hurdles. But if you have a vision and you really believe in it, keep going because it will pay off. It has really shown me that the vision that we invested in 20 years ago was the right vision. And it's really doing some great things today.
Given that you're used to solving problems of pretty good magnitude, what are you focused on right now?
We are focused on looking at some of the needs in our community. There's a real kind of huge burst in children with autism with significant behavioral problems. And so in response to that, we're growing our team of professionals that are real experts in that area. So we're constantly looking at what are the issues coming up. Like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, coming out of the pandemic, there was an explosion in social anxiety in teenagers and kids who spent a year basically online now having to go back out in the world and navigate that really led to this spike in social anxiety. So we had to shift and really be able to get folks very comfortable in helping kids with that. So we're constantly looking at what are the trends that we're seeing in terms of the field of mental health, behavioral health, education, and how to make sure that our staff is trained and well positioned to be able to meet those needs.
If people want to get in touch with you, how could they do it?
I would direct them to our website, which is www.sascoriver.com. Check out our website. There's quick, easy links there to get in touch with me, other members of our team. So check us out there.
Thank you, Chris, so much for joining us and sharing your journey, your leadership, and the meaningful work happening at Sasco River Center. Conversations like this are exactly why we created this program to get the information out, get exposure out there, and really feature leaders who are solving real problems and thinking deeply about what's next. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you, everyone. That's it for today's episode. Thank you for joining us. And if you got value from today's conversation, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time on Ascend Growth AI Podcast, where we mix smart growth moves with a little AI magic.